Well, it's been a busy morning already, folks. We knew it was going to be a busy week, but man, did not count on this being the morning we were going to have. I want to bring on Alan Bonner. He's joining me here, Crisis and Emergency Planning at Alan Bonner Communications Management. Alan, we've got a lot to talk about today, but we can't start without addressing the story of the morning. Google services are coming back online globally, but they're still spotty. They're still intermittent. I've got all my own services open right here in front of me. I can't get them to work consistently. I'm getting some email coming through. Google Docs is working a little bit at least. We're here today to talk about logistics of vaccines and distribution and all that jazz. But I ask Alan, tongue only barely in cheek, can the military run its own operations without Google?
Well, don't forget, just to riff onto another aspect of the topic, GPS was a military piece of kit, as they call it in the military, and it was turned into civilian kit, I believe, by President Clinton. So there's a lot of military kit that has civilian applications and vice versa, which complicates military operations and would certainly complicate war. But I don't know that Google has anything to do with the military, but look at how much we rely on it. I'm checking Google this morning to see whether a particular place I want to go to shop is open today. It's in, and it probably isn't. I mean, we really do rely on it. In the olden days, I don't know if anybody remembers, but you'd dial 7 numbers. Someone would say hello, and you'd say, "Are you open today?" or "What time do you close?" That doesn't happen anymore.
I was joking earlier in the show with one of our earlier guests, Alan, that a couple of years ago when my modem broke, I didn't know how to call the company to ask for a replacement. I had to Google it. And, I remember thinking when this happened, when the modem went down and I went, off the technological grid for a couple of days, it occurred to me that somewhere in my lifetime we had stopped getting phone books delivered to our house every year, and I hadn't noticed when it happened. One day I got my last phone book, and I never occurred to me that there would be no others. But you're absolutely right. Our communications are completely reliant on this technological grid that normally works great, but doesn't always work great. Let's talk some logistics, though, of vaccines here. The vaccines have begun arriving. The first shipment touched down in Canada last night. And we hope to see the first injections rolling out in the next couple of days. But boy, there's a lot of work that has to happen behind the scenes.
Yeah, and let me divert your attention one more time. I'm not supposed to go on nice people's talk shows and challenge them or their profession, but I bet you're as frustrated as I am at journalism these days, because seemed to be a week ago that we were at the back of the line. We couldn't get any vaccines. We'd done a bum deal with China. It was a catastrophe. And all of a sudden the vaccines are arriving and people are being inoculated. I think the coverage of this has been mediocre, but maybe you're more plugged in than I am. The second thing is, I don't know why we're not using the post office. There's going to be what the military call a hot wash-up at the end of this operation, maybe 2 quarters or a year from now. And why we didn't use the post office, I don't know. Why that vaccine isn't being flown into an American military base in a secure facility, why it has to go from a plane to a truck to a warehouse to a truck to another plane seems nuts to me. I have a lot of questions about the rollout. Now, if it all, gets rolled out, I'll stop mattering. But I find all these little elements interesting.
In terms of your comment on the media, actually, I think is bang on. I wrote a column a couple of weeks ago, and the column basically was exactly what you were saying there. It was my effort to cut through all the partisan screaming from the conservatives at liberals and liberals back at conservatives and just say what was known. What did we know for sure about when we were getting it, what had been said, and how did Canada compare to other nations there? And my conclusion was that there was still a lot of downside risk, and there was every possibility that the liberals found a way to screw this thing up in the rollout phase. But I concluded 2 weeks ago that I didn't see any evidence that we were behind. The question is going to be, I think, Alan, is we are not at the back of the line. We've received our shipment, in fact, ahead of most other countries, which actually puts us at the front of the line. The question I have, though, is whether or not we get a token early shipment and then wait months for any substantial follow-on shipments. I honestly don't know yet. So, like I said, there's still downside risk here, But the fact that we know so little is partially, I think, an indictment of the media. I think, Helen, though, it's also partially an indictment of a culture in this country where access to information is just habitually and chronically bad. The government does not want to tell us some very basic things about this, no matter how many times we ask.
Well, fair enough. And if you and I were working for a cabinet minister, we would probably say, look, boss, get a few of these in the door, have a photo op of being inoculated, and everybody will go back to sleep. I saw the parliamentary assistant to the procurement minister speaking on TV who said, it was almost like a Saturday Night Live sketch, nothing for about 8 minutes. He was smiling. He was pleasant. He was talking about how diverse Canada is and, buzzwords like rollout and ramp up. But there was no information there. So I share your, shall we say, concern, not cynicism, concern.
No, I mean, we'll get to cynicism by the end of the week, but we can start with concern at the early part of it. We got about a minute left here, just in terms of what we're actually gonna expect to see, Alan. Now that the vaccine has arrived, the military is running the effort at the federal level. Some of the individual provinces have turned to retired military to coordinate their efforts here. This seems to be a situation where the feds will bring in the vaccine and get it to the provinces, but then the provinces are going to have to distribute it to local units from there.
Yeah, and look at the diverse geography we have in this country. To take a province I'm in a lot, New Brunswick, it has 3 major cities and a lot of smaller communities and a lot of rural distribution of people. Saskatchewan, much the same, live there as well. So that's quite a different kettle of fish than distributing it in even Nova Scotia, where the big city is Halifax, and then everything else is quite smaller in comparison. So, we've got logistics about planes and trains and automobiles.
There you go. I mean, the old saying, Alan, professionals talk logistics, and that's going to be a lot of what we're going to be seeing over the next couple of days. Alan, a pleasure as always, man. You take care of yourself.
You bet.
All right. Alan Bonner, my guest here on the show, Crisis and Emergency Management. And I think it was, who was it? Was it Omar Bradley, the U.S. General, who said amateurs talk strategy, professionals talk logistics? I don't know. It might be one of those quotes where no one knows exactly where it comes from. It's been attributed to Bradley, but I don't know if it actually was him. In any case, it makes sense. Everyone always knows, in general terms, what we need to do. Very few people know how to do it, and that's the challenge. And we when we talk about strategy versus logistics, normally we're talking matters of state, weighty military affairs or geopolitics, but really it works almost perfectly in almost every facet of life. It doesn't help you to know what needs to happen if you don't know how to make it happen, and that's what we're dealing with here in Canada. We know what we have to do. We just have to hope we have the right people with the right tools in the right places to do what we